Hello and welcome to the Ending Body Burnout Show. We're your hosts, Chris and Philly, co-founders of multi-award-winning functional medicine practice, serving busy people with energy, mood, and gut issues.
While busyness, overworking, addictive doing, and perfectionism might be the norm, it's not normal, and it's a major contributor to health issues.
Our goal with this show is to give you a holistic root cause approach to healing your body so that you don't have to continue doctor or diet hopping or popping a gazillion supplements hoping something might stick.
So get ready to heal your body, get your spark back, deeply connect with yourself, and step into the life of your dreams. Let's dive in.
Hey guys, welcome to the Ending Body Burnout Show. Great to be here. Super excited to share this podcast episode with you. Recently, we chatted with our good friend, business coach, and all-around great bloke, Glen Carlson. Glen's awesome. He's got a wealth of experience and knowledge when it comes to juggling entrepreneurship, business growth, and overcoming and preventing body burnout. Glen helped us out in a pivotal moment of our own business burnout. So we're so excited to have him on our show as he shares his insights on how you can get out of the hustle and grind burnout cycle, look after your health, and have epic growth in business and in life. Here's a little bit about Glen. Glen Carlson is the co-founder of Dent Global, best known for their award-winning Key Person of Influence book and business accelerator programs. From the chaos of the GFC, Glen has built Dent into what entrepreneur.com refers to as the world's leading brand accelerator. With 5 business acquisitions under his belt and a team of 45 across 12 time zones, Dent has shaped the trajectory of hundreds of best-selling authors, TED speakers, and multi-award-winning fast-growth companies. In 2021, Virgin named Dent as Business Enabler of the Year, and the Growing Business Awards named them Business Advisor of the Year. Glen's passion is helping entrepreneurs stand out, scale up, and use their business to make a positive impact in the world, or as he would say, make a dent in the universe. Glen has graciously offered all our listeners a free copy of the Key Person of Influence book, which you can grab in the show notes. And now I am stoked beyond measure to share Glen and our time together with you. I know you'll enjoy this one. Well, let's roll it. Hey, thanks so much for coming on, Glen. I'm actually really stoked to have you on our podcast. I'm pretty chuffed, actually.
I'm stoked to be here. You guys are awesome. I love the way you roll. And every time I come across you guys online or in the flesh, I don't know, it's refreshing. You've just got this great dynamic, great mission, great purpose. I'm a fan.
Thank you. Oh, that means heaps coming from you. Maybe we can start with what got you into the world of entrepreneurship, if we start with your journey.
Yeah. So, I mean, the short story is my dad retired from the Navy. I would have been about 4 at the time. His passion was sailing. He built a boat. We sailed around the world for 7 years. So from sort of 6 to 14, I'm living this life of freedom and adventure and kind of like devil may care, doing all this fun stuff. We get back to Australia because I was nagging to go back to school because while there was a lot of freedom, there was also a lot of isolation and loneliness, which I felt was exacerbated when you're a kid because it's harder to find kids to roll with than it is, you know, other adults. And so we got back to Australia and my dad's grinding away fixing boats. My mum's working in real estate, which is just like the worst possible fit for her personality. I end up working at McDonald's because, like, what else does a kind of young kid 30 years ago do? And that was kind of life. And it, like, for the first time, experienced this, what felt like a lead weight of just financial pressure and grind, and like the opposite of fun. I thought going back to high school was going to be like the show Saved by the Bell, which was like, and it wasn't. It sucked and life felt hard and I felt like, you know, sort of paradise lost kind of a deal. And then Dad recommended, because I'd what did I know? I knew boats, I knew scuba diving. Dad recommended I maybe go around and offer to clean the hulls of some of the boats down at the yacht club where we were still living. And so I did. And there was a big regatta that weekend, right? And the thing with boats is when they've got a clean hull, they go significantly faster, up to a knot or two, which is the difference between coming in the front of the pack and the back of the pack. And so I put up this little A-frame sign and made $1,000 in a couple of days. And in that 2 days, I made more money than I would have made working at McDonald's for a month. And that was just a force function for just changing the way I saw the world. In hindsight, it wasn't so much the money, it was this sense of being able to contribute to my family. But now looking back, it's like my dad kind of saw boats as being his vehicle for freedom and adventure. It was sort of in that moment that I realized business was going to be my vehicle for freedom and adventure. There was no one telling me what to do, make up my own rules, live or die by my own sword type of a thing. And I felt the sovereignty of that, the personal responsibility of that was actually all very aligned to the values that I'd kind of learned living on a boat. Because when you're in the middle of an ocean, there's no one going to come and help you, right? You got to be totally self-reliant. And working for someone else didn't seem to jive with that. So I think, people talk about their entrepreneur light bulb or seizure or whatever they call it. Yeah, mine was when I was 14 under the water, scrubbing shit off the bottom of boats. And that led to the realization that if I get better at business, I get freer. I get more influence. I get to have more impact. I get to have more fun. There's even less people that can tell me what to do and how to do it. And so I kind of went down the rabbit hole, and that rabbit hole became, valuable. I was able to guide other people down the rabbit hole, and Dan and I lined up, and that's how we created what is now Dent and the Key Person of Influence Accelerator and our venture fund and all sorts of stuff.
Awesome.
Love it. That's awesome. I love some of those themes that you've just talked about there, like you said contributing, freedom, adventure, self-reliance, impact, fun. That sounds like a real principled, ethical, like a real cool character set coming into entrepreneurship. It wasn't like, how much money can I earn and how much can I make? It was like you're talking about fun and impact and freedom, adventure, self-reliance, and that sort of stuff.
But to be fair though, I'm talking about that now. Remember I said on reflection, that's all looking at the time. It was like, make the money. This is like, follow the money. Because I don't know. I'm not much of a philosopher. I find it's very, very hard to hold, big philosophical ideas when you're broke and struggling. It gets much easier when cash is flowing from multiple sources while you sleep, whether you work or not. It's very easy. So no, I didn't have that level of self-awareness, let alone, set of principles then. It was just, I can make this money on my own. That was kind of the extent of it then. That was the sophistication of my philosophy.
It's evolved. The philosophy's evolved in hindsight as you've grown up, hey?
Well, I don't know. Did you see that Steve Jobs talk from Stanford when he says, you can't connect the dots looking forward, you can only connect the dots looking back? We called the company Dent as an homage to the guy, right? He said it's the role of every entrepreneur to make a dent in the universe. So I'm kind of a bit of a Steve Jobs fanboy in a lot of ways. And that really resonated. Like, you can't connect the dots moving forward, but you can connect them looking back. And if you can look back and connect the dots and then find the themes and then make sure, he didn't say all this, but you can then choose, well, what are the things I'm going to do in the future that align with the themes that made me happiest in the past? And that becomes the compass, right? So, I suppose over the last decade, really doing a lot of work into what are those dots and what are those themes and how do I make better decisions to kind of guide and govern my life and now my daughter's life and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, definitely definitely not as a 14-year-old kid just trying to get out from under the boot of trying to survive, basically, financially. Well, survive's not a fair word. Just trying to get by as a middle class kind of family.
Yeah. Did your mum and dad, because correct me if I'm wrong, but your mum more in the natural therapies, energy healer? Is something like that?
My parents broke up when I was about 18 for all the right reasons. They've been married for 26 years, 7 of those on a 40-foot fiberglass tube, which I think kind of counts for dog years, right? So anyway, they broke up for good reasons. And then mum kind of went on a bit of a, like, what's now right for me, and lit up when she found kinesiology. And she was in Perth and she went down a decade-long rabbit hole. She holds a master's in applied kinesiology. It was a 3-year degree that she had to complete before she, it's not one of these things where you go down the road and, get a mail-in order and you're a kinesiologist. It was a big deal. And, she was seeing clients and creating kind of, remarkable transformation. So she definitely holds the paradigm that as is the mind, so is everything else. And, it's not the outside stuff. It's not the external medicine or, that person's toxic and so therefore I'm sick. It's like, well, hang on a minute, let's recenter the lotus of control to within and then start making the best decisions outside, and using the body as a guide to try and clarify what is that kind of internal lotus, what does the body need. So wild stuff that she does on the table with her kinesiology. She doesn't do it so much anymore. You'd call her retired, I think, but certainly those philosophies are still there.
Yeah, awesome. How did that, or did that reflect or cause you to look at your health in a different way?
No. Well, I think while mum was going on her journey, I went on mine, and hers was more applied. Mine was more through, firstly, like drugs and psychedelics, and then that kind of cleansed the doors of perception, shall they say, to help me realize that, there's another layer to all of this, which is undeniable. And then I had a meditation mentor / kind of guru of mine that kind of explained, I can't remember his words, and I think I'm plagiarizing someone else's words here, but said something along the lines of, drugs are only a window. You can look through them to see what's on the other side, but they're not a door. Meditation is the door to the same place, right? And so I'm like, So then I began an exploration into meditation and consciousness and what is behind this sort of veil of Maya reality, whatever we want to call it. And did a Vipassana, a lot of 10-day or 10-day silent meditation retreats. So I went pretty deep, pretty fast. And that, I suppose, is what set up my own orientation to self and the seat of consciousness, my consciousness at least. And I think from there, my undefined health journey became. It's not like I had any kind of great epiphanies, but I guess it always gave me a bias towards taking responsibility for myself as opposed to abdicating that to somewhere else, which again aligned to the stuff I suppose my mum and dad taught me on the boat.
Awesome. Now, a lot of business owners are prone to body burnout, juggling all the things. I think too, especially like what you talked about with the finances, it can get really stressful, even if you're doing the 9-to-5 job or trying to create a successful business. But there's a lot of stress that comes with running the business and wearing many hats.
Yeah.
Do you, along your journey, have you experienced your own type of body burnout or burnout that you'd be happy to share?
Well, it was diagnosed as like adrenal fatigue,
Yeah.
right? So I'm assuming that's what you're talking about, like sort of thing, like just yeah. So and again, so it was around the same time that we were named the 9th fastest growing company in Australia. I was in 3 states a week, consistently every week, 50 weeks a year for about 3 years. So just relentless. Single, so I could pull it off, but living in airports, first name basis with most of the flight crew, literally. So, and dealing with the accelerated growth of a business for the first time. I built businesses before and achieved results before, but never and we're grown by another million, and we've grown by another million, and we've grown by another million. And it's like, okay, and try and bring on team. And now this team member's got a problem. This person's saying they don't have that information. This person's just quit. That person's burning out themselves, and I'm to blame, and this mistake's happening. And basically that suddenly at scale, with me traveling around and not everyone being all in one spot, I've heard it defined that stress is the gap between how things are and how you want them to be. And the more kind of emotional buy-in you have to that gap is the degree, or is stress, right? So the more pissed off you are that things weren't how I wanted them to be, that basically is that gap is kind of how I now think about stress. Whereas the Buddha would have just been more like, meh, no stress. Whereas I'm like, why won't they just do it the way I want it to be done? Why is this happening this way instead of this way that I would prefer it to be happening? Like, stress. Ignorant, didn't know this at the time, hadn't experienced it before, didn't kind of have the advice to preempt it. And so I think I massively underestimated the psychic burn of energy that had 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Like I was just used to, I burn energy when I'm moving physically. And if I go for a big run, I'll be tired and maybe a bit the next day, etc. As opposed to this constant, relentless drain of energy that it's kind of like because I didn't realize that was creating this extra deficit, I didn't know I needed to be doing additional stuff on top to counter that. And it ended up to the point where I got a margin call on that deficit that I couldn't cover. And I was burnt out. I was in the ground, not in the ground, but I was exhausted. I was burnt out, and I didn't care anymore. Like I'd lost my ability to care about anything because I was a dried sponge at that point. Burned
out. Okay.
That was burnout. That was my only real experience of burnout.
Yeah. Did you have any physical symptoms showing up with that as well? Like, was it just exhaustion?
Mostly anxiety.
Yeah.
I think it was mostly anxiety, like high functioning. Yeah. I'm trying to think. Probably quite bloated. So I think I was probably eating a lot of carbs at the time. And so I was probably carrying a lot of extra weight and bloat.
Yeah.
Physical symptoms, like, I can't remember. This is a little while ago now. I'd say I just would have been chronically tired and probably grouchy.
Yeah.
And like not very clever, not very smart, like finding that my decisions were not particularly holistic or wise. And I'd probably collapse down to the bare minimum of what my brain could handle at that point, which was, responding to systemic issues at a tactical level, which is just a recipe for perpetuating the problem.
Yeah.
And accelerating it. Yeah. So more like that. I didn't have I don't know, whatever other symptoms might pop up, but that was the main stuff.
So root causes, looking back with more hindsight and wisdom. So lots of stuff going on, big growth. You talked about the stress. What was that you said? Because that was great. Stress.
What you want. and
The
where
gap
things
between
are.
the gap between what, because I think it was, so the core of Vipassana meditation is to see things how they are, not how you want them to be.
Mm.
Right. Which is this notion of relinquishing attachment to something you have zero control of, which is the universe manifesting itself in front of you. Right. Like, people get upset because of the weather. It's like, what a wild thing to get upset about, because no control of it. Right. And so, yeah, when I heard it once defined that the degree to which you have buy-in to that gap, that is stress. The more you have, the more emotional attachment you have to the gap, and to it needs to be different for me to be okay. Stress. So I guess root cause would be, for me now, is whenever I see myself getting rigidly attached to the way something needs to be, two things. Either A, I consciously choose to unravel for that, or if I actually do want the universe to look like that, I need to realize that there is an additional cost of that stress in the short term, while I might lean into changing my world, if that makes sense. So it's not so much that my insight is not so much that stress is wrong, or that I should not accept stress in the pursuit and my rigid attachment to the way I want things to be in my pursuit of making things happen. But when I do, I need to be aware that that's part of the equation, and do the things to offset that deficit.
Yeah. Okay. So what did you do then, like, to recover from adrenal fatigue? Was that just the awareness and
Mostly
letting
alcohol.
go? Alcohol. Well, hang on. That causes adrenal fatigue as well.
I'm joking.
Kombucha?
To a large degree, cut out alcohol, re-engineered the business so I wasn't traveling on an airplane all the time. Realized that I was very bad at delegating and had to learn how to do that effectively, which over time fundamentally transformed the nature of the business, meaning I wasn't the bottleneck and it could run on its own, which radically reduced the amount of pressure that was on me. So a few of the things were strategically business related, that it wasn't possible to continue to run the business in the way I was running it and to not be stressed, because to be the bottleneck of a business of that size is just too much throughput, not able to handle it. I wasn't able to handle it. So reorganizing the business so other people could do good work was a big one. And then for me, it was like a protocol of sort of fitness, supplements, half-yearly blood work to try and balance that up. I did a whole bunch of like allergy testing with food to see what my body preferred, etc., which I didn't really follow. Like, it said I shouldn't eat eggs and tomatoes. I'm like, they're my favorite things. So I decided I was going to make it work while ignoring that whole rabbit hole. And I seem to have.
I have a lot to say about allergy testing.
Okay, great.
Actually, I'm totally cool with you just eating eggs and tomato. I think that was a great choice.
Yeah.
If you felt fine on it, eating them.
I was going to feel restricted, right? So again, if I'm waking up going, I should be having like eggs and tomato for breakfast and avocado, which is like my favorite, and I'm not allowed to do that, the stress of that gap, I decided was going to be more than any of the consequence of eating it. And so I placed my bets. So no, a combination of rethinking the business for better, to be an actual leveraged vehicle, as opposed to me being the leverage and it being the vehicle, which is not scalable, and self-care. I guess those two things were the fix. Yeah. And I think one of those things without the other wouldn't have worked. All the self-care in the world with a broken business, not going to fix it. And a good business without the self-care, go the other way. You could become big, fat, and indulgent and end up dying of a heart attack or something like that, which I see. I see successful business owners get comfortable and big. sloppy.
Love it.
Did you have anything you wanted to bring up?
Oh, I just wrote those two things down: self-care and leverage. It sounds like a recipe for taking back control where you can control. Hey, you talked a lot about just before. You can sometimes get stressed out worrying about things that you can't control. You can't control if somebody else is getting burned out in your team or if they've got issues and situations. But what you can control is your own self-care, your own management skills and that sort of stuff. So I guess you just described a really neat paradigm for recovery, I think.
That said, maybe some nuance. I actually can control whether other people get burnt out in my team. That's all systems, culture, and good management and caring. The signals of burnout are pretty obvious. So I disagree with that because I used to have a business that burnt people out quarterly, which would radically increase the likelihood that they would have to resign just for their own, well-being. Even if that's why they didn't know they were doing it. So no, part of the business redesign was about making sure the systems were in place to be able to know whether or not someone was over capacity or not. And so if they were stressed or burning out, it was not a function of them being overloaded in their role.
Yeah.
I love it. I love that. That's really cool.
That is cool.
That's responsibility too. Yeah, you're stepping up, being responsible for what you can control, what's in your skill set.
That's right. Yeah. So there are certain things. So there needed to be this line in the middle because there's kind of what you can control, there's what you can't control, but it's important. Sometimes people take that as if I can't immediately control it right now with my current knowledge, experience, and resources, then I can't do anything with it. And they forget that there's what you can influence, right? Which is kind of like the gray zone between the two, but realistically that fits into what you can control, right? You might not be able to control it 100%, but you can certainly influence it. So I kind of see it as there's what you can control easily right now, like the TV remote or, your credit card or whatever it is. There's what you can influence, which is the health of your team, which kind of requires a little more negotiation perhaps. And then there's what you can't control, right? Which is, what decisions a political leader is going to make next.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Awesome. All right. Let's talk about anyone watching this on YouTube, key person of influence. So Chris and I, so this is one of your business accelerator programs under Dent Global. Chris and I actually did key person of influence.
Did it?
We started.
Smashed it.
Thank you. When did we start that? 2021 Jan. So this was a year into COVID, and life was not great back then for us. Hey, I mean, probably on the outside, people didn't really, we weren't sharing a lot, but we were burnt out in a way, especially business wise. COVID led to the opportunity of shutting down one business, but then we put all our eggs into Chris and Philly Functional Medicine, and things weren't working the way that we were expecting or hoping it to be.
We're going to take over the world.
And we're like, we need some help here. So this is where we reached out to you and we started Key Person of Influence program. So for anyone who isn't aware of KPI program, can you give a bit of an overview of what that is?
Well, it is built around that book that you were just holding up. So the fundamental premise of the notion of becoming a key person of influence is that trust is an incredibly important equation in any business. Trust needs to be built on the front end for people to be able to spend money and get involved. And most business owners are building trust in very analog ways, right? Sitting down, one meeting after another, et cetera, et cetera. You have this other category of founders that are very much leading from the front. They're very public. You can think the Richard Bransons, the Elon Musks, the Oprah Winfreys, you could even think of the Simon Sineks, the Tim Ferrisses, the Gary V's, et cetera, just as broad characterizations, I think, that anyone can kind of get their head around, where they are the expression of their business's vision and values and value proposition. And as a result, they build trust at scale. right? Using digital assets, media, technology, all this sort of stuff. They're conversing to a global audience kind of in real time. And as a result, they do a lot of business because they're reaching a much more powerful audience. And so the Key Person of Influence Accelerator is built around this idea that if we can enhance the visibility and the clarity of message of the founder of a business, that is the unfair advantage. That becomes the force multiplier that allows that business to grow significantly. So we'll often work with businesses that are already good at what they do. They get referrals. They might have a couple of team, etc., but they've plateaued, flatlined. They're not pulling a great wage out of it. And they're frankly a bit invisible. Their marketing strategy is functional at best, 10 years old, out of date, if you like, at best. And they're kind of buried in their business doing more of the work than they are representing the brand. And our whole argument is that's got to end. The founder is the only person that can represent the brand as the founder. You can hire a manager, you can hire a salesperson, you can hire a head of operations, you can hire someone for delivery, but you cannot hire the founder to perform that visionary role as the key person of influence. And so because of that, we sort of argue that, look, if we were sitting on your board of advisors, we would say that you doing anything else than that super high value activity, and we break it down in the book around pitching, publishing thought leadership, scaling products, raising the profile and credibility of the business and the products and the brand, and doing partnerships with big players. Like those are the big five. If you're spending the majority of your time doing anything outside those five categories, it's a bad use of your time. It's an irresponsible deployment of capital, etc. So that's a message that usually resonates and lands to enough of a portion of the market that we built an accelerator around it, where we have it's a structured program. There's accountability, there's mentoring, there's guidance, because it's not like, oh, we're just going to show you how to run Facebook ads. To take someone on a journey to really becoming a visible leader in their industry, it really requires a cultural environment to inspire that. You can get anyone to do Facebook ads for you, but to really learn how to lead as someone in your industry visibly, which freaks out the monkey brain no end. The probably the most valuable layer of what we do beyond all of our growth systems is the community. And so we kind of bottle it all up, and that's the Key Person of Influence Accelerator.
Yeah. Actually, this book, which I will put a link in the show notes if anyone wants to grab a free copy, of the Key Person of Influence book. But this was the first business book or marketing book that I read. I hated marketing and sales. Like, I was just like, I don't want to know any about this business stuff. I just love doing what I do and I love helping people. And then Chris is like, read this. And I read it, and every page I'm like, I could do this. It felt good. It felt good. It didn't feel kind of like the way I saw sales and marketing felt a bit icky in sales. But this was just like, just show up and shine and share your message because you genuinely want to help people. And then you package that all up into a process that actually works.
Yeah, it's the hunter versus the gardener approach. Like, do you want to be going out hunting butterflies all the time, or do you want to grow a garden that just attracts them in? And most of the people that we work with, they don't want to be the hunt. They don't have to chase new business all the time. So it's like, okay, so then what is the ecosystem? Nature loves ecosystems, and ecosystems are attractive. So, if you wanted to have lots of butterflies in your garden, you could go to a gardener and find out, well, what are the plants you need to plant that are going to attract butterflies? It's the same with clients, right? You just work out, all right, what are the things that I need to build in my business ecosystem that are going to attract clients, and how do I put some layers in there so it builds trust and authority, like winning awards and getting featured in the media and, a few of these sorts of things. And it doesn't happen straight away, but over time, that ecosystem starts to compound and spool up like a real flywheel. And all of a sudden, people are 2, 3, 4 years into it, and all of a sudden their whole business and life is unrecognizable compared to what it was earlier. Because when the mindset shifts from just what I was doing, I'm just going to put activity in my business, and I am going to be, one of the things that I talk about is that the job of a business is to deliver all this great output. The degree to which that business is broken is the degree to which the founder has to compensate with their time and energy. So I was compensating with a lot of my time and energy. What we teach in our accelerators is actually the thing to do is to work out what's the missing asset here. Like, what's the problem with the business? What's the missing thing we would need to build that would perpetually solve that problem? And that just compounds, because once it's built, it's done. And then we can build the next thing and the next thing and the next thing and the next thing, which becomes unlimited in terms of leverage that can be built, as opposed to if I was still limited by the amount of time and energy that I had in a day, I'd be very constrained. And so I think the accelerator helps, A, get people out of their own way, B, shift from a operator mentality to an owner mentality, but more with the community gives them like courage, the permission. I don't know. You have to tell me to.
The evidence as well. It's like the evidence. I think there were so many stories where I'm like, that's how we feel when we first start. And then it's like, oh my gosh, like 3 years in, completely different.
Yeah.
So it also,
it's a wild thing to see, because it's so much bigger than me now. Like, as you well know, I'm not the guru. There's a whole ecosystem of wisdom kind of coming from it. So I get to now see it as a thing separate to me, which is pretty wild.
That's cool.
So everything that you just said to, like, and I've experienced it personally, but becoming a KPI, how does that help business owners get out of the hustle and grind and essentially escape burnout?
Yeah, well, it's basic economics. And see, and I will explain. I don't sort of say that as a glib comment, but most people are running around in business without a fundamental understanding of like the laws of nature, if you like the laws of capitalism. One is like supply and demand, where people like to think about ways to make their business better, but they tend to default that thinking to how to deliver better value to a customer. So that could include how to hire a better team to do that, how to have a great culture so their clients' team like showing up every day, how to get feedback loops and net promoter scores to optimize, the customer experience, which sounds like a noble goal. And of course, it's the ticket to the game. But the problem is what that is in fact doing is building excess capacity, which is another way of saying building excess supply. You're working out how to create like really lots and lots of supply to the market. The law of supply and demand, the foundation of, economic principles, is if that supply is less than the available demand of people that want to buy not just the market, but your particular thing, doesn't matter how good you are at delivering value, you will not make money. You might make revenue, but you won't make profit because the market is distributing that elsewhere. And so part of becoming the key person of influence is it creates a force function where you have to see the other side, where really the key person of influence primary job is the manufacture of demand, right? How do I position myself and the brand of my organization where there is always more people wanting to do business with us than we have capacity for, which equals profit, right? It's the only way that profits get realized in a business. And that can be engineered. That's not luck. That is by design, right? And most people don't go around waking up in the morning thinking about sales and marketing. They think about tinkering with how to improve their business. And so I guess the number one thing we do is we create a bit of a cultural resistance to not get caught into the trap of just optimizing delivery and to start optimizing the system that manufactures demand, right? So that would be one key thing, that just understanding a basic fundamentals of supply and demand. It's like, okay, we've always got to have more demand. And as we're scaling, we've got to be scaling demand first. Again, people like to scale supply first and then wonder why growth sucks so much cash and isn't profitable. It's because they haven't front loaded the demand as step one in their strategy. That's the first piece. The second piece is that, again, the way capitalism tends to work is resources will tend to be placed where they are most efficient, right? So you're all priced in a way where they're most efficient. Like, you're not going to go and pay $10,000 for a hammer. Government might, but you won't, because you're like, well, that doesn't make any sense. I'd use a brick if I had to get the job done. So it tends to equilibrate. So if a business owner is really just showing up as a manager, right? They're doing management work in their business, and I jump on Seek or a job finder website. It's a Seek in Australia, but for your international audience, I can find a manager for call it 110 grand a year for a business doing under job. How do they expect to grow a multi-million-dollar business doing the work of $110,000? Answer to that is they can't. They have to move themselves up the organization hierarchy into the rarefied air of doing the stuff that only they can do as the founder, right? Like, Elon Musk can't hire someone to be the evangelist for Tesla or for SpaceX in the way that he can, right? The same with Branson. Like, there's this certain thing that can't be delegated. You can't hire for it. And it's vision, it's values, it's value proposition, right? It's really getting clear on that, and the strategy and the courage to make the big decisions and pull off the big plays, etc. Everything else can be delegated. And so then the question becomes, well, okay, if I want to spend more time up in that level of real influence and not in my business, what are the skills I need to master? And our argument is you need to be great at pitching and communicating value and changing the way people think, right? Paradigm building is pitch. You need to be seen as credible, which is publishing. You need to be scalable beyond your time, which is productizing. You need to have a good profile, which is basically showing up in a way that other people want to leverage you through to their audience, whether it's on mainstream media or Joe Rogan or your podcast or whatever it is. And then finally, partnerships, like these big partnerships, big deals. This is the realm of the key person of influence. And if you apply a better pitch, publish content, products, profile, and partnerships to any good business, they're going to make it great. Right? You can't argue. No one can argue, better communication ain't going to help my business. It's like, they're obvious. And yet when you audit people on how much of their time is going to those things, it's very, very small. Like, they're definitely caught in the weeds, which sort of circles back to my first point that I was making, where when I'm burnt out and tired, my perspective shrinks, my ability to influence shrinks, my ability to think shrinks. I get all tactical and I start responding to systemic problems with tactical solutions, which doesn't work. And so, I think what you do is great, because on one side, we work to elevate thinking and strategy and action, and you guys support it with the self-care, the wellness, to make sure that there's fuel in the tank to burn. Because I really do think, like, if you don't have the self-care, the energy, the clarity, the ability to stay in front of the stress of the chaos of business, you just can't think as well. Like, you can't think big. And so then you're kind of constrained by your own level of energy, regardless of how much you'd want it to be different.
It's hard to see big picture when your world is on fire. It's not safe. It's scary. It's frustrating.
Yeah.
Nervous system is just like, You said before, oh, what did you say? Oh, becoming a key person of influence freaks some people out. So a lot of that comes back to like deeper roots of self-doubt, imposter, monster, you know, those labels. And actually we find too that deepest root causes of why someone's body burns out in the first place often comes back to these dysfunctional beliefs we have simmering underneath. I had a consult with someone recently who was constipated. And when we broke it down, it actually was because she was blocked up and too scared to show up as herself. And so
holding on to her crap, literally and metaphorically.
So what are your thoughts around that? Because I'm sure you get that objection quite a lot. Yeah. Like, how do you work through these feelings of not being good enough? Can I do it?
We
Whether
don't.
it's business or anything.
Yeah, we don't. We have a bit of a shortcut, which is our argument is that actually it's not being afraid of doing the thing that you're here to do in the world and not taking the actions required to do it. We say that's less of a function of your mindset and it's more of a function of your environment. And the analogy I use is this. Let's say you're a great coder, right? Like super good at coding websites and freaking, large language models and all that sort of stuff. And you're home alone, middle of COVID, in your parents' basement, never seeing the light of day. It's predictable that one's level of motivation is probably going to drop in that environment. And then there's a multi-billion-dollar industry that's like, you got to go to Tony Robbins, or like, you got to go get your head right and childhood wounds and all this sort of stuff. Now, I'm not saying that's not true, but what I'm also saying is, let's say they did need to go to Tony Robbins and they did have childhood wounds and they were constipated and all this stuff, but you still put them on a private jet, took them to Google, put them on a crack team working on some cool new project. What's going to happen to their level of motivation and performance? And our argument is 9 times out of 10, 99 times out of 100, what's going to happen is that person is going to be, as part of a team, is going to feel so much more connected, so much more aligned, so much more inspired. They're going to have that banter. Everyone's got a common vision and purpose. They've all got a combined skill set, which comes together where the product of the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. And all of a sudden, despite their childhood wounds, they become successful. And we see this, right? People join a gym. People try and get fit on YouTube videos versus showing up 3 times a week to a CrossFit box, right? Or whatever. When for jiu-jitsu, right? There's no way I'm getting these outcomes training on my own. At the surf club, same deal. You could think of like a science laboratory, right? People at home doing science. No, people coming together with like a lab and the tools and the resources and the culture and the accountability and all this stuff. And all of a sudden stuff's being created. So our whole thing was, we don't have the experience to try and fix all the childhood wounds. That's not our thing, but we can create an environment. And there's another layer of this, is that if you've got an environment, so big things are things like publishing books and winning awards and getting featured in the media and speaking a public message. If you're coming from a friendship circle, family and friendship circle, where people are not doing that, and by definition, you're going to have to do something that is not part of the current culture of your tribe, that is the biggest alarm bell that is built into our neurology over 100,000 years. Align to the tribe. Because if you're kicked out of your tribe, you're doomed. And so we restrict all sorts of behavior to conform with social norms. And our social norms are really constrained around our closest family and closest friends. So my argument is that if you've got a community that is not actively producing and doing all the stuff that you want to be doing, that is where you're going to experience the imposter monster, right? Because the imposter monster is, I'm not doing what's right for my community. So what's the thing to do? Well, you either change your values to align with the community, which is, I'm not going to win awards or be featured in the media or stand up or do something. I'm going to get a job and hate my life and, you know, be resentful to my wife behind the scenes or husband or whatever it is and just live in that morass. Or I'm going to change my environment and I'm going to start hanging out with more people that are doing that, to the point where when I'm surrounded by enough of a critical mass of those people to not be doing that stuff triggers the fear of being kicked out of the tribe. And so now we can use that primal blueprint type thing to actually drive us to create the things that we were once afraid of doing. And so we can kind of hack our psychology, if you like, to not ignore the childhood wounds, but to accelerate despite them, and to hopefully give us some more time and resources to do justice to a real spiritual journey, if you like, a real journey of introspection. Because I find the two are different. I find business growth doesn't require a personal journey. It requires a business community of performers that you're aligned with. That doesn't necessarily mean that you're not going to get, that there aren't huge life goals that are linked to happiness and well-being that come from the inner deep dive. I just don't see enough evidence that one equals the other. Whereas I do see a lot of evidence. I see a lot of evidence of unhealthy people that are messed up becoming insanely successful in business simply because they're rolling with all the right people. Right? So if you can sit there and go, okay, how do I optimize myself for my business and wealth creation? And how do I then also optimize myself for my health and well-being? Then you end up with an entirely different, and I would say far more inspiring and influential creature.
Yeah, that's cool.
That's just me.
I resonate with that. Being in the right place with the right people who are doing things that maybe you find scary or challenging, you increase your capacity by osmosis a little bit. Hey, like you can.
Yeah, we know this. You know this. You know this for joining a gym or joining a training or joining any kind of a cult. And I say that in the best possible way, that has a strong culture. You align to that culture, and you just do. And it's easier to align to something that other people are aligning to, right? It's very hard to be the Jesus of the world that just totally stands up in opposition to the culture. It's very hard to be like the Gandhi or the Mandela that kind of goes to jail for 30 years or whatever on principle and then comes out and ends up running the country. Like, these are the rare few that can, suffer the slings and arrows in total isolation. We just know human beings are better in tribes. And so the choice of tribe becomes really important. It used to be, you're a Muslim or you're a Christian, and those are the two tribes we've got, and we're going to go to war over it. So that's not the world now. Now we can choose all these nuanced, little subgroups, subreddits, if you like, that we can be a part of, where we actually get to choose the different layers of operating system that define us. And that's wild in terms of the times that we're in, because, a lot of that stuff doesn't need to be physical. It can absolutely be virtual, right? Jiu-jitsu, I kind of need to be able to go down the road to do it, right? But there's actually a lot of rabbit holes I can go down that are going to absolutely make that experience even better. There's lots of things where it's not necessary. And these tribes, if you like, are virtual, and they're changing people's lives in all sorts of different ways and areas, not just business and health. And I think, I think that of all things, given kind of what we've just been discussing, puts us smack bang in the middle of like the wildest time to be alive. Put AI on top of all that, and it's like, wow.
Can I just say, like, address this to the listeners? There might be you listener, dear listener, might not be ready to embark on a personal development journey and lab testing and all that sort of stuff, but you've got a business, or you're thinking of starting a business, and you want to be in a better place. So being surrounded by people who are successful in their businesses, I think that's what you're saying. Hey, Glenn, like, that is the shortcut to business success, being in the right place, right time, right people.
Well, that's
Right
my
process.
argument.
Right
Yeah.
process.
But I'm not saying it should be one or another. In fact, I think
be
my whole
both. I
argument
reckon
of
it could be
is it
both.
really should be both, or you're in trouble, right? Because eventually one will unbalance the other, and it's not hard or difficult to do both. And if you are in any way sick or tired, but if your car's not working and you've never ever taken it for a service, right? We take our cars for a service every 10,000 Ks. Like that's what blood work is. It's like, have a bit of a look under the bonnet and let's see what's really going on. Because often there's stuff that goes on well before the little light goes on in the dash, right? And so we get to avoid the rattles and the squeaks by just kind of being in front of the leading indicators. And as humans, we can't see the leading indicators of our own health. Right? Science can see them, blood work can see them, except stool tests can see them. And so we have a culture of we wait until the symptoms manifest, which could have easily not had to happen had we just decided that we were going to be a bit in front of it. Business is no different. Right? We want to be dialed into the leading indicators of what's working, what's going to work, and what are the leading indicators that are going to make it work. And what are the leading indicators that tell us we're off track, right? Because I want to know that we're going off track before we're off track.
Love it.
So it's kind of the same mindset that I apply, at least to health, that I do now to business. Like you can often drill these things back to similar first principles.
That's what we do with our scorecard. We have a scorecard assessment where
by Glen Carlson. Score up, people.
The plug there as well.
Scorecard marketing, another book.
Yep, scorecard marketing.
We might put that one in the show notes too.
So what's the website exactly, Glenn? I know what ours is.
Scoreapp.com.
Scoreapp.com. It's brilliant. So we love using it because it
fully AI integrated now. So now you can go in and GPT will simply, like we're plugged directly into the language model. So it'll prompt you with a couple of questions, and what used to take people days to build a scorecard, it now spits out in about 6 minutes.
Oh, that's awesome.
Wow.
And we use our scorecard as a preemptive questionnaire to see what those leading indicators are that lead someone to body burnout.
100%, right? Yeah. Because what you're trying to do is your scorecard is the X-ray, right? It's helping someone understand the stuff that they can't obviously see for themselves. Because if they could obviously see it for themselves, they wouldn't need you. It's like, oh, the broken arm. I don't need you to tell me I've got a broken arm. I can go in and get that fixed, as opposed to, oh, you're chronically low in magnesium. We know that has a hormonal cascade into all these other areas, and that leads to the very set of symptoms that you're experiencing. We should probably remedy for that, or whatever, right? It's like, oh, okay. Yeah. Or like, oh yeah, I'm in front of my phone at night until 11 o'clock and then can't sleep very well, and I'm up again at 2 o'clock. Right? Again, doesn't need a blood test to know that, okay, potentially there are some things that can be fixed here.
Yeah.
And it signals potentially some misunderstandings about what health is and what's needed to keep it on track.
Yeah, we've actually had a few people reply back to their email result, and they're like, I didn't think things were so bad, but obviously my score is saying they are. I'm like, great, it's perfect time to start working on things before things get worse.
Well, that's potentially the good thing to pre-frame, right? So they're going into it knowing, like, you know, this is going to reveal things that you don't think are a thing. And that's the point, right? The point of this scorecard is to reveal the things that aren't a thing now, but are going to be a thing in 3 years or 2 years or whatever it is, because that train is coming.
Yeah. Awesome. Oh, it's been so good. So good catching up and chatting and getting your words of wisdom. And Glenn always just has such cool insights.
Nuggets.
Oh, I didn't think about that like that. And we've got Chris has scribbled down lots of stuff.
I'm a note taker, and I've just like personal three pages of little Glenisms.
So is there any last words of wisdom you'd like to leave to our listeners around getting out of the hustle and grind burnout cycle? or anything else you'd like to add?
Well, I would say that it's kind of not negotiable. I would say that if you're even listening to this, or if there's even a seed that your health should be in a better state than it is, or your finances or business should be in a better state than it is, to not act on that with every fiber of your being, it is predictable that you're going to live a life of misery and regret, because it will just keep coming back to you every single day, reminding you that you're not doing the very things that you know you should be doing. And that is a more dire cost than any of the pain, the challenge, the discomfort, the fear, the uncertainty of solving the health problem and solving the business problem. And so I think, again, when one explores the second and third tier consequence of inaction, like, just get after it. It is fair, though, that one should probably be brave, have fun, and direct all of their energy to make a dent in the universe. And if not for you, then for your kids.
Yeah. Awesome. Love it.
I love it.
All right.
So good.
Thank you so much.
That's awesome. Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Philly. Thanks for having me.
No worries. We'll stick around, Glenn. But thanks so much, everybody, for tuning in to our podcast episode. We will chat to you on the next one. Peace.
Thank you so much for listening. We so appreciate you. If you'd like to give us extra smiles, drop us a review and spread the love by sharing this episode.
You can also rate your own state of burnout and the root cause contributors by taking our Ending Body Burnout assessment on our website. And if you're interested in learning about our group or one-on-one Ending Body Burnout programs, shoot us a DM via Instagram or Facebook. Have the best day ever.